Welcome to The Art of Growth. I am Jim Zartman. Joel is on vacation this week, but we will be back next week with the panel on relationships. This week, I wanted to do something special because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and two questions came out of it that so jarred me. I thought we have to have a discussion and record this and then share it with The Art of Growth because it is so important regardless of your type, and it really fit the mission of The Art of Growth. So I was having a conversation with my friend Laura McKowen, and these two questions emerged. One of them was, why do we have a hard time fully enjoying some of the best things that happen to us? What is that voice that goes off in the middle of some amazing experience that robs us of the full beauty and full joy of that moment? And the other question was something I hadn't even realized until we were in this discussion, which is, why am I so much happier now than I was 5 years ago? I don't have less stress in my life, and yet that is a very true statement. So we're going to share that conversation today. Laura McKowen was on our 7th panel, but we didn't really talk about her work or who she is. Laura McKowen's work inspires people to say yes to a bigger life after addiction. She's the author of a forthcoming memoir, We Are the Luckiest, The Surprising Magic of a Sober Life, which will be out in December of 2019. She has been featured on WebMD, The New York Post, Bravo, The Today Show. She writes an internationally recognized award-winning blog, is the host of 2 top 100 iTunes podcasts, and leads sold-out retreats and courses focused on sobriety and personal development. You can check out her work at lauramckowen.com. You can also check out her podcast, Spiritualish, with Meadow DeVore. But right now, Laura and I are going to have a conversation about joy and increasing our capacity to experience joy.
Hello.
Hi. This building is so funny. There's like 20 different smells on the way up.
Okay, just go for it.
Are we ready?
Action.
Action. So this is the first time we've ever sat down like this.
Yes.
We're usually sending each other phone videos
Yeah.
and not speaking one-on-one.
Or especially into microphones. This is a really interesting test. I'm very curious to see how this turns out because we both speak into microphones pretty frequently.
Yes.
We both are in the podcast world, and we've had a lot of conversations outside of that, but this is our first time doing this. So
Right.
I'm super excited.
So do you feel having a microphone in your face makes it weird? Do you feel formal?
I don't know. I feel slightly nervous, but I'm also like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
I've been excited about this.
Yeah.
So.
Why is it this conversation that we decided, you kind of decided, you were the one who said we should record this. We've had a million conversations.
Yes, but this is such a poignant thing that I think so many people don't even realize they don't think about. They're so in default mode on this issue that so many other things, I feel like there's a lot of material out there about that. There's a lot of like, oh, you can go to a lot of great people on
read this
lots
book,
of
do
stuff.
this thing. Right.
I don't feel like this gets talked about nearly enough.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And it for whatever reason, it hooked both of us.
Yeah.
To the point where we sent each other many long messages. It was like, maybe we should just see how this goes if we have a formal conversation. So we are talking about the primary topic is foreboding joy.
Yeah.
This concept of foreboding joy. And what that means to me is, it stems from this idea that I first heard from Brene Brown,
Right.
That joy is the most vulnerable emotion that we actually can feel. Because if we don't have the capacity to allow joy, and there are many reasons why people don't, then when it comes into our lives, good things come in, we start disaster planning, right? We immediately start to think this is going to get taken away. And should I plan for it to get taken away? And what if I lose it? And
not even if, but we automatically do it. Right. We automatically are in something great happens.
Yep.
And there is either the terror that it's going to be taken away, which puts our defenses up and we don't fully engage and enjoy and take in the joy.
Right.
Or we think we're going to lose it, or we're going to ruin it. Something goes off in our head.
We're going to be punished for it.
There's that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of beliefs that go off.
Yeah.
That's
Automatically.
Like, yes.
Yeah.
Automatically. That can rob us of that.
Yeah. Sometimes constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly. Once I started to think about this, because it was, as most things, I was dropped into an experience that I couldn't, all my, like wisdom and knowledge and books I've read and whatever couldn't get me out of it.
Right.
It was an experience where I was out of depths all of a sudden. And so you go, what the hell is actually going on?
Yeah.
And once I started to explore this, it's like, oh God, there's a whole, it's something that I don't think is talked about very often, but it's big and it's real.
Yeah. Brene Brown mentions the thing where, a parent has a new kid and they're all this love and all this joy they feel for him. And then in that second, that joy gets intercepted by this idea that something horrible could happen to this person and my life would just be a wreck. And
yes.
And I think what I mentioned to you was the experience where Abby talks about when we were dating. And she says, my biggest regret while we were dating is that I didn't enjoy the process. I didn't enjoy us just getting together enough. Enjoy. There's
and
that
the
word.
process
Joy
of getting to
there.
know each other.
Yes, because I was evaluating whether this was right, whether it was going the right direction, what was going to be the outcome of the relationship.
Yeah.
And so those were just a couple of the examples that came up. Like you maybe have some others.
No, but that I think almost everyone can identify with. That's where we get hooked.
Yeah.
Most often is in romantic relationships. Like, is this the one? Is this I'm going to marry you?
Right.
Know. So, yes.
And then if I marry you, even if I do marry you, even if our relationship is going great for 5 years in, what's going to be happening is because we have breakups most of us have breakups in our past where like, where is this going to go? Is this going to end someday? So
how's it going to end really is the question.
I think it's this phrase. If I had to sum it up, foreboding Joe in one phrase, it's like, yes, this is great, but what if?
Yes. Yep. Right. So there are a couple different things I could bring up because I could talk about what dropped me into this or...
Sure. Talk a little bit about what dropped you into it.
Okay. Yeah. There's a few different things I want to bring up, but we'll just see how, what works. Okay. So what dropped me into it was because I would say overall, I think I have a pretty good capacity to feel joy. Right? I would say that about myself now.
In most areas of your life.
Yes. And even in some areas of my life where there is a ton of uncertainty all the time, like work. This was a conversation I had with a friend today. He does this thing that I was doing about this new relationship that I have about work, and he does it all the time. And it's his constant disaster planning.
So he thinks my work is going well, but what if?
Yes. Or just questioning everything that feels like it could be good. What if? What if? What if? What if? What if? It completely robs him of enjoying anything that is actually good.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate is you end up not being able to feel what is good.
Right.
It's not even like you can't access it anymore. So what dropped me in was a new relationship. And genuinely, like, being surprised at liking someone for the first time in a while. And there are complications, right? Like, it's a long distance thing and whatever. We're in our 40s, so people have kids and old, exes. And
sure, there's complexities.
There's complexities that didn't exist when we were 25.
Sure.
But instantly... there's maybe, like a couple days of like, oh my God, this is great. And then it's just boom, like all the things that could possibly go wrong.
This is great, but what if?
This is great, but what if? And this is the thing about relationships. And Susan Piver is a great teacher. She teaches she's Buddhist, but she teaches a lot about Buddhism in the realm of relationships. And I remember listening to a talk from her years ago. Maybe it was actually the intro to a book. And one of her books, and she was like, relationships are kind of the craziest thing that we do because it will end you're going to lose this person eventually, or they're going to lose you. Like, it will end. That's a guarantee, right? So it kind of brings, and because of the level of investment of our hearts, and no one is safe from that, right? That it brings us right to the fundamental knowledge of like the biggest grapple that we have as humans, which is this impermanence thing. Like, it's gonna end, right? And for some reason, I think for me and maybe other people, I don't know if you experience this, it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna be annihilated by this thing. Eventually, somehow, like, you're going to die or I'm going to die. Like, say we do end up spending our lives together.
Yeah.
You're going to die someday.
Yeah.
And I'm going to die. Or, like, you could leave me at any point. You could decide you love someone else. The list is endless of the ways that it could go wrong. You could get sick.
It makes us keenly aware of our own mortality in ways that I think we deny in other areas, but our relational aspect brings that a little bit closer.
I think that's why it's so acute.
Yes.
That was something that occurred to me. I was like, why is this so sharp when I can tolerate it in so many other areas? And I think that's why. And then there's all the other junk, right? It's like we have histories and we have trauma and we have beliefs and all the junk that we bring into the programming, the conditioning that tells us that this can't last. It's going to go bad. You're going to be annihilated. You can't count on this.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the other person, too. For me, it's very much about me and, like, my own temperament. Like, I don't trust myself in this thing.
Oh, interesting. So it's not even so much – it's not just the other person because so it's, like, doubled because you got your own kind of thing. Like, am I going to be able to
totally.
go
It's
the
almost
distance?
more that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It's almost more that. It always starts out as, can I count on you? Are you going to go somewhere?
Right.
Are you going to, like I want to lock you firmly in place. And then it always turns to, like, my own capacity to stay.
Oh, I think one of the fundamental things that people deal with in relationships is, to a certain extent, due to that fear, all couples have an aspect where they're trying to control each other.
Yeah.
Because of that fear of the loss of control, because of the vulnerability it takes to experience the actual joy of the relationship, we go into this control thing where we want to know how the thing is going to pan out, how it's going to end.
Well, you don't want to be blindsided. No one wants, like, you want to at least be like one step ahead of the other person, like to fully let down your guard means you're admitting that anything could happen anytime. Right.
Which is Brene Brown's point where she talks about joy being the most terrifying of all emotions to feel.
Yeah.
Because of how exposed you are.
So this is a moment where I realized, oh, that's what's happening here. Okay, so when I had my daughter in the hospital, I will never forget, immediately after I had her, they take the baby now and then to the nursery to do, she was jaundiced, so she had to get tests done and things like that. So they would, like, take her and wheel her out. And it was like all of a sudden, it was like my perception got rearranged, like psychically. Like, I saw a different world all of a sudden. It was almost like this funny mirror type thing. Like, corners of counters were very sharp all of a sudden. Like, the world was dangerous, and I hadn't realized it before. Like, corners were sharp. there's concrete floors in the hospital that could kill her. Like if she dropped on the floor, it would kill her.
Gosh, yeah.
But it was like, this was out of my control. It's like all of a sudden the world is really dangerous. Like people make mistakes. Like, what if they just dropped her by accident? Like, what if something happened and they ran into another cart and, like a baby cart and just like she flung out of their arms? It was like this infinite possibility of disaster.
Yeah, it's a minefield.
And it was so overwhelming. It was bizarre. And I remember just like trying to tell Ryan, my ex-husband, about it. And he didn't feel that way. Thank God.
Yeah.
We probably would have just melted into a puddle right there. But I think that's what that was. It's like your heart, it just explodes. It just completely bursts open. And there's a million more ways that you could now be hurt. And it wasn't a conscious thought process. It was like, boom, the world is more dangerous.
Interesting.
So when I had this experience where I was sitting in a hotel like Starbucks, I was waiting for him, the new relationship person. He was like working and I was just there in the middle. It was like just a regular, I was having coffee and working and just going about my business. But I realized like all of a sudden it was the same experience. Like, oh my God, the world is infinitely dangerous now. There are all these things that could happen. And I remembered the Alma thing. My daughter being born, I was like, oh, I felt like this before. It was then.
Wow.
I know.
It's so interesting because, like when my daughter was born, I think I do the opposite thing. I was so overwhelmed with my incapacity. I didn't feel like the world was a dangerous place. My thing is, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do what it takes to prepare you. And I mean, for years, I was like afraid of having a kid because I was like, I'm going to create someone and then I'm going to create a situation where they're going to need therapy. Like that's going to be on me. Like, and so like that did it, postponed it for a while, and just being a lot of my own parental things, it makes you keenly aware of your own relationship and all of the ins and outs of that.
Yeah.
So there's, look, we're trying to tie something that makes sense, but in these moments, what it goes off is there's all of these strings that are tied all the way back through your history. Mm-hmm. And there's all of these projections that go out into the future. Mm-hmm. And those, like, all of a sudden, the tension of that snaps this wire.
Such a good way to put it.
And we go, oh, crap. What's going to happen? And then it kicks in all of this things of belief. And that can spiral us downward. I was thinking about this in terms of, I came up with this weird little phrase for it. Yeah. Which is, we live the practice of Prozac.
Okay.
So depression is measured on something called the Hamilton scale. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of this? Mm-hmm. So, 0 to 7 is normal. Oh. And then you have
gradations.
Gradations all the way up to like over 23 is like severe, need to be in a home kind of a thing. And so if the best drugs in that situation, they only move you about 1 to 1.5 points on that scale.
I didn't realize that.
A good night's sleep can actually move you up to 6 points. If you do sleep and exercise, you're moving a whole category.
Yeah.
So, but what Prozac does is or any of these drugs, they cap your highs and your lows.
Yeah.
So
they keep you in a range.
They keep you in this range. So I think we try and do this. We try to cap our highs with our fears and we try and numb our lows.
Yes.
And so when these moments that come and that cord gets stretched and it's about to snap, all of our beliefs about what we think of how life works like snap into place.
Oh, that's such a crazy visual.
Yes. And that is this point where we actually have to question our beliefs and we have to actually think through, how am I thinking about this right now? How am I feeling in this moment?
Because you don't, I think until you, like I phrased it as getting dropped into an experience.
Yes.
But in your terms, it's like the thing snapped.
Yes.
Right. So
past and future.
So you become aware of your beliefs at that time because it's like, well, what's going on? Because otherwise you're mostly unconscious to what you're thinking and believing most of the thank God.
Yeah.
Or we wouldn't survive. We wouldn't survive a single day. I do enough self-examination. I don't need to know all of it.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
But yeah, you come up against these thresholds where it's like, nope. And, you know, I've experienced this before. Like when I got sober, I realized, in your terms, my range was tiny. I had a lot of capacity. Well, I don't know that it was tiny, but I had a lot of capacity to feel terrible. I was very comfortable with that. I didn't have much capacity to feel good. I didn't trust feeling good because I would sabotage it every day, right? So it took me a long time, and I see this happen to almost everybody who comes out of addiction. It took me a long time to trust that I could feel good, do good, to trust it.
Yeah.
Because I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop, for me to kick the shoe off, right?
Either it's going to drop or I'm going to kick it off. But either way, the other shoe's
it's going.
Right.
So you're constantly like waiting, you know, and I see people do this all the time. Like, can my life actually just be okay?
Right.
Can my relationships just be okay and healthy? And a lot of people are deeply uncomfortable with that. They're deeply uncomfortable. So that's interesting, like that range.
But do we really want just okay?
No.
Exactly.
But that's the range you're working with. Right. Like in the beginning, you know, it's like, wait, to have just stable relationships that don't have a ton of drama, that are good. I mean, they're good, not just okay, but they're good. Yeah. It's a muscle you have to build. It's a trust you have to build with yourself, with life itself, with other people.
Yeah. Because there's this emotional muscle memory that it's not.
Yes. And that you're doing something bad if you feel good. If you feel joy, you're doing something bad.
Talk more about that.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is the other interesting
huge
thing that I realized was going on with this relationship thing. And I haven't quite figured it out, so we're just going to talk it through.
Okay.
So there's a couple pieces that I'm thinking. One is that they've tested brains of people in love. It's Helen something. We'll look it up. So if this goes up, we'll reference it correctly because she deserves credit for the work. She did this study of people in love, and they scan their brains, and the same centers light up when people do cocaine, and to the same degree. So it's that powerful. It causes the same dopamine rushes. A lot of the same, hormones get activated, and all the brain chemistry and all that.
Serotonin jacks up.
Oxytocin. But these very powerful these very, very powerful drugs that are in us. And I have a history of doing drugs and drinking that lit up the same centers in my brain. And for me, those behaviors are associated with being out of control and really bad things happening. So I couldn't figure out why. And this might go a little too far. I don't know. Are we a G-rated show or are we an R-rated show? Are we a family-friendly show? I can keep this PG. I would get this feeling sometimes, like in the first years of sobriety, when I would have sex, I would think it would have this immediate backlash afterwards of like impending doom, like something's really wrong.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. It was
because the muscle memory is
terrifying.
This level of experience or something
it was like the physical physiology.
Yeah.
It was triggering like the muscle memory of like, no, you've done something bad and something really bad is happening. And not like the Catholic guilt bad.
No.
But like impending doom, you're in danger bad.
Sure.
Yeah. So that was interesting.
This chemical cocktail that would normally be experienced as pleasure has on the back end of it a muscle memory of terror.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
It
makes sense. But
it's a more extreme version, perhaps, than what a lot of people feel on a daily basis. But I think it's a really good example of like, this is an extreme version of what most of us do with the pleasures of our life every day.
Yeah. So then I'm in this relation, and new love or whatever is like that. Yeah. It's very heady. It's very like there's all kinds of things going on in our body. And I couldn't figure out why I had such anxiety. Like, you and I can talk about it. And we can have all these conversations, and like I can use all my tools and stuff. But there's a physiological thing also happening that's it's like triggering trauma, you know,
It is.
going, you're in danger and you're doing something bad. Like, you're doing something wrong and you're going to be punished for this.
Or you're doing something that's going to put you in very bad danger.
Yeah, you're actually in really bad danger, because the worst experiences of my life for years and years and years and years were related to the back end of those feelings, from getting drunk, getting high. And for, that's got to be like some serious circuitry in my brain still, even though it's been 5 years or whatever. It's like,
it takes a while to rewire that.
Yeah, and maybe it never fully gets rewired. Maybe it never does. But that, just thinking about it in those terms was like, holy shit, that makes a lot of sense. Joy, or is it joy, or like a high of like feeling good? No wonder you can't hold on to that. Or what? No wonder it has this flip side, disaster planning, because like physiologically you're freaking out.
Yeah.
So that actually helped me a lot. Like, to just think of it that way, I was like, oh, okay.
So what is that like now when you think about this relationship, when you think about the good things, the excitement around it? Has the level of sabotage diminished?
Well, I don't know that I was sabotaging.
Well, I mean, but you weren't experiencing the joy. So
okay, got it. Like, am I just sometimes knowledge is powerful, right? Just to know, that might be what's going on. And so it was like that brought my volume down a little bit, just knowing that, because it was like you're subject to an internal process that has nothing to do with reality. This is just I also work with enough people who have experienced trauma, and I know how it works. So for some reason it calmed me down. So yes, I would say it allowed me to just go, okay, this isn't what's happening. What's happening to you makes sense now, because of, if those things are true, which they feel very true, that's what's going on.
Gotcha.
But it's still there, it's still like, this stuff takes, I think, lifetimes work, because that's not the only thing happening. Then there's all the other junk that's happening, like the past strings. We'll call them the past strings that get pulled. And you have to slowly, one by one, like, take the string, like, allow it to, whatever you do so that it isn't so tight. And, it takes, maybe it's like making new thread, you expand your range for what you can tolerate the more you understand it.
Yeah. And even just acknowledging, like, I'm getting pulled right now.
I'm getting pulled, right?
I'm getting pulled into a possible future that scares me and disastrous, because when I feel this feeling, it ends badly. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting pulled by past trauma and all of those different things. And but I think there's a lot of beliefs that get sparked right in this space. Totally. And it looks differently for different people.
Yeah.
So one of them being, joy is not for me.
Yeah. Do you have that?
Good things at this level are for other people. I think I don't have it a ton, but I know a lot of people, and I know for a lot of people that's a very visceral experience. Like, or even just this, like a good relationship, it's probably not going to happen for me.
Yeah. I could have all these other things, but not that.
Right.
Yeah.
Or this kind of work opportunity, not really going to happen for me.
Yeah. What's the book, The Big Leap? He has a word for this, or a phrase for it. It'll come to me, but it's like we have a threshold for what we can tolerate.
Yeah. Oh, and here's another one. This was along the lines of that one, which is joy is limited. I can't have more. It's combined with the belief that, I think it's actually combined with this never enough culture thing, because so we live in this like scarcity mindset where like our value is determined by our number of likes and how many people are interested in what we say and responded to us in this environment. And so you combine that with the belief that, well, there's a cap on what I can experience joy. and you sort of thrust those two things together.
Yeah.
And I just think it causes this anxiety point that is very hard to move beyond. And I don't entirely know how to explain that, but
Yeah, I don't either. But I know what you mean, and I think it's a couple things. I think it's thinking that you're going to find it's mistaking like something else for joy. Because I can tell you, getting a bunch of likes, getting a bunch of attention, being in, having your 5 minutes of whatever feels like joy, but it's not. It's not. It's not. It's not.
yeah.
But it feels like it. And so I think what we tell ourselves is I got to keep chasing that. And I have to keep going after that. And with the underlying idea of that is it's a limit. It's a pie.
Yeah.
You got to take it. If someone else gets it, there's less for me.
Yeah.
That's a thing I've been mistakenly chasing for, I get caught into chasing.
Oh, I think any of us who do public work run into that kind of thing. I mean, I think even people in their private world, they do it in a million different ways.
Other ways.
So, I mean, relationships wise, people go, we don't have that same chemical cocktail that we had at the beginning. They don't realize that's what they're saying, but like we just don't feel the way it
I'm not
did
in love
back
with him
there
anymore. Yeah,
because we equate love as this like chemical cocktail that feels like being high. Like I have a very happy marriage. I feel very, very lucky. We've been married more than 13 years, so we have a very settled, stable relationship. It doesn't feel
like a cocaine high every day.
No, it doesn't.
Thank God.
Right. Seriously, that would be exhausting. Like there's a reason those chemicals came in. And like that experience is still back there for us.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful and it's a great memory. And we love the pictures. We look so young. We're so young and beautiful.
And it's real. It's like
it was this incredible visceral experience. But like to try and throw that onto now would not actually be this joy thing. But I think a lot of times, people are like chase that high.
Yeah.
So we chase a lot of different highs. It can be it's the never enough culture can tell us to chase the high romantically, to chase the high in all of these different areas.
It's the most available game. And it's
ooh, that's a good phrase. It's the most available game.
Yeah. It's the most available game that we have. We are in it even when we don't want to be in it anymore because of these things, phones, right?
Yeah.
It's the thing I'm constantly grappling with. Because on one extreme, you go, fucking none of that matters. None of that matters. I'm taking myself out of the game completely. And it's like, well, no, It's not true that none of it matters.
Because you're making real connections with real people and that matters to their life and it's altering their
and it matters to my life, and it feeds my family. It does.
Yeah,
like
totally.
I rely on. We'll call it social media for now.
Yeah,
I rely on that for my livelihood. So to say that it's all bullshit isn't true, and then I get inevitably when I say I'm just quitting it all now. I get the message from someone who's like, I've been following you for 2 years and I'm sober now. I've been 2 years sober and your work changed my life. And I just wanted to send you a message now because I'm 2 years sober and my life is different. I've had a baby or whatever.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, maybe it's not all terrible, And then there's the other extreme where you just chase that.
Yes.
And that feels terrible.
It's so funny. In that researcher who was talking about the depression, he was talking about how in a lot of cultures when you say, I'm really depressed, I should do something. And Americans, we tend to go towards, I'm going to do something for myself. I'm going to go out and do this thing that will make me happy. And in how most other
whatever you're calling it, yeah.
And in most other cultures, they immediately think the solution is I'm going to do something for someone else.
Yeah.
And I think so much of that chase gets because it's like I'm just doing it, I'm just chasing for the likes, that can become very self-oriented. But also the like, I'm going to wipe it all away can sometimes be a very self kind of thing motivated too. Because it's not like it loses the awareness of I did this work for a reason. Yeah. Which is to be in the service and benefit of other people. Yeah. And in
the service and benefit of yourself too.
Yes,
like it's the good side of that.
Absolutely.
It's the good side of that.
Because anything we do that has great meaning is always going to have both attached.
Yes. Yes.
It's only when we divorce one from the other that we actually lose the meaning.
Yes. Yes. I was hoping I would get to bring up the Avett Brothers documentary. I didn't know how it was going to fit into our joy conversation, but I think this actually is totally appropriate, and this is kind of where it goes. And I think have you seen it yet?
I haven't.
Okay, this won't ruin anything, but I think this is the tension that we're talking about, at least an angle on it. So they're two brothers that have just been making music for like 17 years. They have one hit song, like on Billboard, by Billboard standards, right? But they have a massive following, and but commercially, like objectively, you could look at them and say, well, they never made it, you know? You could look at it that way, depending on who you're comparing to.
Sure.
Like compared to Taylor Swift, they're nobody, right? But compared to other people, they made it huge. So there's the thing that I think is so unique about them, and I think the reason that Judd Apatow probably made a documentary about them is because they have stayed close to the joy of making their art. And they seem to, at least, not wrestle too much with the game, the most available game that I was talking about. They seem to. While also not disavowing it completely. Like, they've also allowed themselves to enjoy some success.
Yeah.
Okay, but the part of the movie that really got me, they sing this song called No Hard Feelings. Do you know that song?
Yes, love it.
Okay. So it's kind of the apex of the movie, and they caught them live recording it. And if you as a musician know how difficult live recording something is with an entire band in one shot, and they did it. And I
saw that.
And
I saw that piece.
When you're watching it that you're watching something crazy come together.
Something spiritual.
Yes. Completely spiritual. I just got goosebumps. Seth Avett is the one who sings most of it. And you feel every word that they're saying, and you know the way that you know when you're witnessing good art that it's born of experience. They experienced every word, every note, everything came together in this impossible moment to deliver that beautiful package of a song, right? Afterwards, their producer, Rick Rubin, was like, that was amazing. Good job, you know. And if you feel this sort of weirdness because they're both emptied.
Yes.
Completely. And Scott Avett just goes, oh, it's so weird to be congratulated on mining of the soul.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's so good.
And they were like, okay, what do you want to do next? And they were both like, we need a minute. You know, we can't. So they walk outside and they film them having this conversation where Seth and Scott, the brothers, are talking. And Scott was having a really hard time. He's like, I just can't. I'm grappling with the fact that we had to experience so much pain to be able to write this song. And that's why it's going to be successful. And the brother was like, yeah, I get what you mean, but for some reason I've been able to, it doesn't bother me for whatever reason. I'm able to separate, like it's a gift for others and it's a gift for me, and maintaining those. It's like he found the balancing point that's always moving, but it's there. And then they finally come around to this point where Scott was like, yeah, I guess that's the gift, if there is one, that because I experienced that, I can create something beautiful. Like that, it was like almost like he allowed himself the joy.
Yeah.
In that moment, or he found the joy. I think this is the point I'm making. Joy stands alongside grief and pain and sadness. And I think what one of our big misconceptions about it is, one, that it's supposed to last. Like happiness, we just want to like keep it. And two, that it isn't included with everything else. Like it's not somehow pure or real or right if we experience it alongside fear or grief or other things. Like to me, joy is a thing that it's like, I don't know exactly what how to articulate that piece.
What it sounds like to me, and what I pull from that is we had to go through all of this in order to create this beautiful thing that will be something for them and for us.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, all redemption stories have that as their underlying line. It's that hero's journey. You have to kind of go through the valley of the shadow of death.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ancient Jewish biblical writers, he says, "And I have poured myself out as a drink offering."
Hmm.
It's this whole, like, yes, it's that self-emptying. One of the things that allows us to experience joy is struggle. It's why we have this elation of, the person who finishes the Boston Marathon.
Yes.
They're in such agony. They're in such pain.
Yeah.
And there's this elation of that because there's something about our capacity to experience and engage with joy that coincides with our capacity to overcome a struggle.
100%. Yes. I think that's sort of where I was going is like, it's like Khalil Gibran has this amazing quote that the deeper sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain.
Say it again.
The deeper sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain.
One more time. It's so good.
This is from the prophet. The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. I think that's it. It's like you don't get the joy without the carving out.
And I think if we're going to talk about the capacity to enjoy, to engage with joy, to not have it be foreboding, I think some people, they've had the carving out, but they've never had the capacity to fill that with carving out with joy. Because a lot of the poets talk about this. I even think of the Leonard Cohen line, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. Yeah. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in."
Yeah.
But we still have this capacity to not let the light in and to only see the hole that the suffering has left. And it's another level of the skill in order to allow the joy to fill that which the carving.
Okay, so I just had this realization. Kids can feel joy. They have great capacity for joy because they're empty. They don't have yet. They haven't been filled up by all this experience.
So kids laugh on average 200 times more per day than adults.
Oh my God. Really?
Yes.
Oh. Oh my God. Wow. That's amazing. Of course, I'm just picturing my daughter. I'm like, yeah. Okay, so maybe that's, it's something about like kids don't know what they can lose yet. Mm-hmm. They don't have the experiences that they haven't had things taken away. They haven't had the losses. They haven't had any of that. So they just experience joy because they're empty of all the hardship. They start out that way. They just have this innate capacity for joy, and it could be anything. Like drawing this this cool monster is joyful because I'm just here, Totally. They don't have all this disruption. They don't have the past thread and the forward thread. They don't know how to...
They're so much more present.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and then as adults, we accumulate all this junk. And I think there's something about this because where I do have the capacity for joy now is in direct proportion to the amount of carving out, burning down sorrow that I have felt. So I think there's something to that too. It's almost like returning to that childlike state, but with the advantage of wisdom. Like it's coming from a different place, right? You know the cost of not being present.
Yes.
Kids don't know why they're present. They're just there.
There's something about that because I think one of the reasons is is that these experiences, they don't change the past, but they can redeem the past. They can rewrite the story.
Yes.
So there's a capacity to rewrite the tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it's like the string that was tied to the past goes bing, and the color turns from like black into gold. And all of a sudden, I can see so much more, because in that string is my empathy for the other.
Yes.
In that string is my capacity for a depth of joy that I didn't experience before.
Exactly.
In that string is a whole world of nuance that I didn't have when I had the joyful laugh of a kid, which is a beautiful thing, but the laugh is attached to something very, very deep.
Yeah, it's experience, and yeah, that's an interesting thing to play with. That how do you, as an adult, having experienced a bunch of life, cultivate the capacity for joy?
Yeah. So I think we should talk about a couple of the practices that actually allow us to cultivate that. But I think bringing up the sort of false versions of it first might be sort of important, because this is not like you should have an attitude of gratitude.
No, please.
I mean,
God,
because
no.
it's rhymes doesn't make it true.
Or helpful.
Because honestly, that's an impersonation of gratitude.
Yeah, it's a facsimile.
It's a facsimile. I think that's the whole thing. And, growing up in the church world, we always throw around this word hypocrite, and it basically means you're a fake. But the word hypocrite, it comes from the ancient Greek, meaning a play actor. The actor was called the hypocrite.
Oh.
And those theater masks that we see with the smiley face and the frowny face on them, that's what they would wear. And that's called a hypocrite mask. So it's this impersonation of joy.
Yeah.
And it's like the whole I am all about fake it till you make it in a lot of areas, especially like work. Like you learn as you go kind of thing.
That's different though. That's not what we're talking about.
But this area is not a fake it till you make it. This is not something where you can impersonate your way into an actual practice of gratitude. So I think that one it reeks of inauthenticity.
I agree. Do you think joy and gratitude are like sisters?
Oh, yeah, we'll have to get into that.
Okay.
Okay, here's the other false version I think that I thought of. True practice of gratitude is practiced and it's not forced. So I think there's a force that says, I should be grateful right now.
Yes.
See, because true gratitude, true joy can discern between what is actually tragic, what is actually painful, and it doesn't try and force it to say, I should be grateful for these other things, even though center of my experience right now is this pain. We have to acknowledge at
spiritual
the
bypassing.
Pain. Right. Ooh, good. Yes, it's not spiritual bypassing. It can distinguish between what is painful and what is good that can be savored.
Good. Yeah.
So yeah, the false versions are just attitude, slogan. It's that the mask of inauthenticity, and the other false version is it's forced. I should feel this way, and trying to force yourself to feel some way you shouldn't.
Yes. I do think though that's not to say that practicing gratitude I think can be good. Especially if you're not someone who leans in that direction.
Yes.
Making a conscious decision. I know people who do gratitude lists every day and say that it changed their lives because it forced them to notice things that they could be grateful for.
Right.
So that is different than slapping the sunshine on everything all the time.
Right.
That's not what you're talking about.
Right. And I think that's a super important distinction. One is the forced one. This is the South on Sunday morning. How are you doing? I'm great. I'm fantastic. I am too blessed to be stressed. Like that level of bullshit. I'm saying like that is not a practice, because I think the practice is
when we're honest.
Is when we're honest, and it's what we do in the quieter places.
Correct.
So it's the whole character is who you are when no one's watching. I think that's the whole thing. It's the private inner world.
The before dawn, sitting with your cup of coffee and really taking notice of what there is to be grateful for.
Yes. Yeah. So as far as the practices, let's talk about the practice of actual joyful life. Because I really was thinking about this, because honestly, like I am much, much happier now than I was 5 years ago.
Okay.
Like significantly happier on a daily basis.
Interesting. I mean, me too, but I'd be so curious to hear.
But I think some of these practices are the things that that have made that true. There's actually an old saint who said, it's not joy that makes us grateful, it's gratitude that makes us joyful. So when you were saying, are these two things sisters? And this is what Brene Brown has said is exactly what's come out of the research, is exactly what this old monk said, which is it's not joy, it's not the great experience that makes us grateful.
Correct.
It's the gratitude that makes us joyful. It's the gratitude that increases our capacity for joy. So it actually has to be flipped, because a lot of times we're thinking, I just need to have good enough experience.
Yeah. And then I'll be grateful for everything.
And then I'll be grateful.
No.
But it doesn't. It works like that, especially because when people talk about the moments of gratitude when they look back over a whole lifetime, it's not the highs, it's the daily. It's the ins and outs. Mm-hmm. I had that realization when, like, for years, what I wanted was my name to come up on the big screen in a theater.
You wanted the peak experience.
Yes. I wanted to see this film, the music by Jim Zartman, in a big theater. And then I'm, several years later, 15, 20 years later, I'm sitting in a theater and my name comes up in the exact capacity. Yeah. And then I watch my name fade out.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, none of the real joy is in this moment. Nope. It was in all of the moments where I was working with my friend who's the director, and he'd come down and hear the new piece and we'd laugh about this and talk about this and what could change and hear it.
Yeah. And an actual creation mode and
process.
Totally. Well, we had that. This is part of the original conversation we had, right? I experienced that with marathon training. Really taught me that. I thought it was going to be this amazing thing to cross the finish line and have a medal, and and it was cool. But
right.
What made it cool was all the struggle of getting there, and like the waking up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. on a Saturday when it's 20 below and running 16 miles. That for 4 months. The
things that sound awful to other people are the reward.
Totally. It's funny because if you can grasp that in whatever way you can, or if you can experience that, it really changes your life. Because I also knew writing a book, like, I want to have that book out there. Yes, I want it to get published. I want to have my name on a book. I want to see it when I go to bookstores. But I knew, even when I was miserable writing this book, I knew, like, these times are going to be idyllic, like, looking back.
Yes.
It allowed some joy into that process. Mm-hmm. And I think if you have a kid, you realize that. Like, how can you not realize it?
Yeah, when you're 80... I just had this whole picture go through my head. Like, you being 80 and you're talking about, like, to a great kid about, like, this book that came out, your very first book that came out when you were at this age after all these experiences. You're not going to tell the story of walking into the bookstore and seeing it on the shelf.
No.
You're going to talk about this old apartment with dark wood that overlooked the Marblehead Harbor. Like, that's the thing that's going to stick out to you.
I'd wake up before it was light out and sit there and struggle with words.
Yeah.
Totally.
And the emotions behind them and all of the things that go into pouring yourself out. The doubt, yes.
Yeah.
Not only of, like, how well can I communicate this thing that happened? How is this thing that happened going to relate? How are people going to respond to it?
Oh, no, it's so much deeper than that.
And all the emotions.
It's like, can I do this? Can I actually do this?
Can I access this?
Yeah.
Stuff?
Yeah. Okay, so just to bring it back, so we're talking about
practices
for joy. I just laughed because I had the funniest, like, thought come. Like, if you want to have the capacity for joy, like, you need to go through hell.
Well, that's the funny thing is, because when I talk about, like, I'm so much happier than I was 5 years ago, one of the hardest things in my life happened when I got let go from a job that I had been in 7.5 years. And because new leadership came in, and I was realizing that I had climbed, as Thomas Merton says, I had climbed to the top of a ladder only to realize it's against the wrong wall. And it was this incredibly painful experience. But I remember journaling shortly after that and saying, gratitude is going to unlock the key for whatever's next for me.
Wow.
And I wrote that in there. And so, and it was so funny because I'm like, at this time I was doing some audiobooks down in South Carolina after I'd gotten let go, and I'd been living in Ohio all that time. And I'm walking along the beach and I started thinking like, well, what is gratitude going to look like for me? What is going to be my practice? And I was like, what do I just need to just pause and be grateful for? And it was like the sand that's under me right now, the ocean to the left, the fact that my feet can move, the toes that are feeling into squishing. And I literally started going through all of these different
Like
parts
intuitively,
of my body.
you just went there.
I started in my body for me.
Yeah.
I was like, my ears that can take in the sound of this thing, the breathing I can. And so it wasn't like any kind of big experience. It was everything immediately in front of me right now.
Yeah.
For my friend Laura that I'm having this conversation with right now. I can feel that.
Yeah.
For this space, this room that I'm in that I stumbled upon one day that's like this beautiful soundproof little tiny room that wouldn't necessarily be everyone's thing, but it's magic to me.
Yeah.
Like all of these things going down and creating, it is a gratitude list, but it's almost this visceral thing of like, the immediacy of what's right in front of me is a
I think it's
practice
always that. It always starts there for me.
of what's right in front of you.
Always. That's the ground. That's
paint the picture for me.
When I feel lost or I feel like so scared, like I was in the hotel that day. Like I can't access. It's not even be able
Which
to.
I got some panicked Marco Polos that day.
Yeah, it's like the body is the answer to me. Like getting reconnected with my body is always the answer. It always gives me what I need to know. Like I went outside, I put my feet in the grass, and I focused on breathing. That's all, because it was all I could do. Right? I was like this close to a panic attack, so it was like, okay, we can't even pay attention to sounds and all the, it's like bring it down to one sense, one thing. It's your breath. Breathe, just breathe. And then you slowly can start to work outward again. That has continued to be my way in to gratitude.
Can you take me on a little journey from panic to gratitude?
Yeah. Yes. So the way it feels in that moment of panic is my thoughts are completely disorganized. Everything's moving really fast. I get that warpy sense of like my environment where the sounds are really loud and the corners of the counters are really sharp. Everything is like funhouse mirror. Turns into a funhouse mirror, and my heart's beating really fast. I can't breathe. It feels like you're approaching, like you are actually going to die, like something really bad's going to happen. I've been there enough times that I know what to do. So remove myself from that environment, put my feet on the earth, be outside, not inside some weird space, because that's not real, like get yourself into as real of an environment as possible. Yeah. So feet on the grass. And I practice this breathing. It's like, because your breathing controls your entire, your nervous system. So it's like physiologically bringing yourself back to breath. It's this box breathing, like breathing in for 4, holding at the top, breathing out for 4, holding at the bottom. And when you're in that state, it's literally all you can do, because this is the thing that the mind wants to do. And this is where joy gets robbed from us, is the mind thinks, if I don't keep my mind on this, if I don't keep my focus on this, something bad is going to happen. And what you have to do is pry the mind away from grasping onto whatever it's grasping onto. You have to
the lie of I won't be prepared.
Yeah, or just if I don't keep my attention on this, it's like allowing the nurse to take your baby. It's like I can't keep my baby alive by just staring at it. The nurse has to take the baby to do things, right? But in my mind is saying, if you let that baby go anywhere, she's going to die, you know? But you can't live like that. So it's like, you have to take your mind off this thing if you want to keep going, if you want to come back, you know, if you want to, like, you got to let go of it. And the breath is the way to do that. And it's like this, use all that power in your mind to just focus on to the breath and just a simple act of trying to regulate it. And slowly I can start to feel my nervous system start to slow down. And then it's a releasing of the grip on this mind control. So then I can start to feel the grass under my feet. And I can start to relax into the experience that I'm having. And what I always tell myself is like, what's true right now? What's true right now? I'm just a girl sitting on a piece of grass in Houston, Texas. With sun. That's it. That's it. That's all that's happening. And that's what gratitude feels like to me. It's like, I'm alive. I'm breathing. I can feel the sun. It's just like the most basic thing. Nothing is wrong with this moment. Nothing is missing from this moment. That's what gratitude feels like to me.
That's beautiful.
Nothing is missing from this moment. It's hard to get to that place. We don't live there.
Immediately I started going, what percentage do I live there? What percentage can I live there? Because I think when I talk about being happier 5 years ago, I think I was living there 2% of the time. And I may be up to like 15, 20.
Yeah. Dude, if you're up to 15, 20%, like, you're doing something right. So I think about this for you because I think one of the places that has allowed you to increase your capacity for joy is through being outside and doing things outside with your body.
Yes.
Right. So talk about that.
Yeah. So that's actually been a big journey this year. I read the Scott Carney book, What Doesn't Kill Us. Super great title. If I just saw the book cover, I'd probably be like, ugh, and pull away. Because it's like some muscly guy, like drenched in ice, and the title is "What Doesn't Kill Us." And I've always hated that phrase, "What doesn't kill us makes us stronger," because I'm like, that's not true. Sometimes what doesn't kill us makes us bitter, morose, paralyzed. Something horrible
makes you annoying,
right? Yeah. That no pain, no gain. I'm like, sometimes pain is your body saying stop.
Yeah.
But anyway, the book "What Doesn't Kill Us," how freezing temperatures, extreme altitudes, and something else can help us renew our lost evolutionary strength. And it was talking about how we didn't, evolve all these years in order to live in this narrow band of temperatures inside walls all the time, controlling our every bit of our environment. Because I think the more control we have over every single aspect of our life, we actually limit our capacity to be joy.
Totally.
Because we have removed ourselves from a situation of vulnerability, which removes ourselves from the capacity of joy.
Yeah, and in this case, it's talking about your physical environment. Like,
yes.
You've literally narrowed your experience down to a band of 10 degrees?
Yes.
Of heat or coolness.
Yes.
And thus it actually affects you physically. It affects your nervous system.
And a friend of mine
cardiovascular system.
It affects all of these different systems. Your cardiovascular system, big time. But even it affects your serotonin levels, your dopamine levels.
So isn't that crazy?
All of that.
It's this crazy metaphor.
Yes.
For what we're saying.
And a friend of mine, she said she dealt with a lot more depression after she came back from living in Belize in Central America for 2 years. Because she's like, down there, when the sun went down, we went to bed. And the sun came up, we would get up. We didn't live, she's like, where I was working in all these villages and stuff, we didn't live in this thing where we constantly forced the amount of daylight we wanted by using artificial lights and being indoors. And I think that was a big component for me is in this last year, and it's definitely started changing my physical body, but being outside I started doing a lot of like, I'm going to run barefoot on the beach in January and then go in the ocean.
Oh,
And
I know.
everyone's looking at me like I'm nuts,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But there was the experience, like thinking about it, I just like, how lucky am I?
Mm-hmm.
That my body can do this. And then when I rejoice in what my body can do, it has the capacity to do more. That's the result of doing that. So it's like, it's actually putting gratitude into the physical realm in my very own body.
Yeah.
Monday, I did a 70-mile bike ride.
How crazy is that?
And
like,
if you would have told me 1 year ago.
I know. You were not
ago,
that dude.
I would have been like, that's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't even believe you. That sounds absurd to me.
But your way in, what was your way in? Because I think a lot of people want to know, like a lot of people go, I want to lose weight. Or I want this like.
I didn't want to set out to lose weight. I was like, I'm moving towards 40 and I want to be able to enjoy things that my friend Ryan got me into surfing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to be able to enjoy surfing more.
Okay.
Which means I need to be able to be out on the water. I need to be able to paddle faster. I need to be able to hold my breath longer. I need to be able to do all these certain things in order to enjoy that more.
Okay, so that was your starting impetus. I want to be able to enjoy surfing more.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And so, but that didn't get me that far.
Okay.
But it was actually reading that book that I was just like, I'm an Enneagram 8. I desire intensity.
Yes.
I have a high desire for intensity.
I have no idea what that's like.
I like intense experiences. So like the idea of like jumping into the ocean in January, running shirtless in the woods in 20 degrees.
That's a hard yes for you. Yeah.
It's like, it would have sounded crazy to me still, but until I had some of the knowledge of these things.
Yeah.
And then that like increased the gratitude of like, thank you for my feet that run. And honestly, like, as always happens when you start exercising, things start going wrong. Mm-hmm. So I started having issues in my knees, but I was like, I'm not going to backtrack this time. I'm going to realize that there's probably a solution in this process, and I'm going to walk out this solution. And then there's joy in the solution. There's gratitude for the solution.
Yeah, you went on an adventure.
Expanding.
You were like you went on an adventure.
Absolutely, it just
and not
expands.
not with a goal of. I think that's when the best things happen. You know, if you were like, I'm going to lose weight, you would have probably had this joyless experience of like, you weren't thinking about it in those terms. So you had all this flexibility to do whatever was fun. And
yes.
And the byproduct, it's like the whole gratitude joy thing.
Yeah.
Then the byproduct is like, you're healthier, you feel better, you look better. And then it like builds on itself.
But you know, what's funny is there's this belief, you talk about the strings tying to the past. I have a lot of hobbies. I develop a lot of, I go down these rabbit trails of like learning to do things, audio. And then I'm like scoring. People are like, what do you do? And I'm like, I do a lot of things.
Yes.
I like to do a lot of things. And like, what, you make leather bags? Like, I don't know. It made me interested and I just went after it and I learned how to do it. And then I made like 100 bags in 1 year and sold them.
That's why we get along though.
And so, but I always had the standard answer because I always had people being like, what can't you do?
Yeah.
And I would say sports, any sports, all sports.
Oh.
I'm terrible. I had this thread tying back, telling me this story of like, you are unathletic. Mm-hmm. I've always been unathletic.
So funny.
Anything
right?
with a ball, like if there's 20 guys out playing basketball, anything, my entire life, childhood, and I go in, I am the worst person out there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so on this journey, like I had this story in the back of my head. I am unathletic, and so that's not a part of my life.
It's not for me. That's a thing for other people.
That's the joy thing. Like when I say that thing about joy is like joy is not for me.
Yeah.
Like the joy of physical activity is not for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like to sweat. But
you
running
do.
in 20-degree weather, I actually liked because I'm not really sweating that much.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a totally different kind of pain, which I actually didn't mind as much. So it's like it's weird to find what works for you.
Yeah. I just keep thinking about this container getting bigger, this like container getting
Totally.
bigger. And when the container gets bigger, all the things have the potential to fill it up.
Yeah.
all the things, like not just the things we call good.
Right.
But you don't get it without that. You don't get it without the container getting bigger overall.
No.
You don't have a joy container.
No.
You have a life container.
Right. So here's one of the things that I think of as far as the capacity to enjoy and the capacity to experience joy is the role of choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I choose to do things that bring me joy, which means I don't say yes to things I will later resent.
Oh, dude. Yes. That is a benefit of getting older if one chooses to accept it.
Yes.
Right?
That is huge to me. Now, like...
so give an example of something that you used to maybe do but you would later resent. Because I think this gets really muddy for people.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
I usually could feel it when I would say yes to things like, ugh. But I say no to a lot now.
Oh,
like,
me too.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of requests, a lot of things that I would have said yes to a few years ago. And then I would be like, ugh, why did I do that?
Yeah.
I remember very viscerally being asked to play guitar for this person and being like, my friend's doing this and I want to support this person. And it ticked a couple boxes and I said yes. And then afterwards I was like, I will never do that again.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't core to my values.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you have to really be careful about that because I do have a value of making money,
mm-hmm.
for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say I will pay you $10,000 to spend one day scoring film for either a horror or a porn, absolutely
There's
not.
no amount of money
There's no amount of money that will say yes.
The Venn diagram has to it has to meet up in the cross-sectional spaces where
yes.
the values all exist.
It would be easier to get me to a soup kitchen serving for free for a day than to pay me $10,000 to score a porn.
Yeah.
It's just that's a personal value.
Yeah.
And I think understanding what you value and what matters to you and what's on mission for you, which means you need to know your mission of your life.
Yeah, which I think
that's
is a whole other thing. That's a whole other.
We'll do an episode on that.
A whole other episode or whatever conversation. Yeah,
conversation. Yeah, but I think the role of choice, only saying yes to things that I'm not going to later resent, definitely increases your capacity for joy.
Absolutely, and I think that probably comes easier to you and to me,
sure,
than other people even realizing you have a choice. Like a lot of people are other directed, or more self-forgetting. So they have a really hard time distinguishing if someone who I love wants me to do this thing, I'm going to do it. And it's like not actually realizing that you not only have a choice, but that you could make that choice. And it would be okay.
Not just okay, but it ultimately serves the benefit of everyone.
Right. That's the catch, right? Because there's some discomfort in that, in disengaging with things that you have said yes to all your life, right?
What's that whole thing about believing what's going to make you happy? I believe that a donut will make me happy, but a run will actually probably make everything feel better.
Yeah.
But it's like actually, and saying no sometimes is actually like giving someone their vegetables.
Yes.
Saying no is often serving everyone better.
It doesn't feel like it in the moment or even for a while, right?
Well, that's the donut analogy. The donut sounds better in the moment.
Yeah.
But it's not. But sometimes when someone asks you to do something, you kind of need to think, is this donut or vegetables?
Yeah. I do that 1,000 times a day with having a kid.
Yes.
It's like the easier thing is just to let her use the iPad, or to do her work for her, or to finish her homework for her, or to cut the corner. It's almost always easier, right? And you can apply that with almost everybody. Like I could keep saying yes to this thing that I don't really love, or I could not. I feel like there's some, and I don't want to go too far down this, but the relationship between resentment and joy is interesting.
For sure.
Yeah. I think it's very hard to have joy in your life if you are feeling resentful about a lot of things or really anything.
Okay, so I just have one more tip as far as how we experience joy. And this comes from where psychologists, they say that negative experiences are like Velcro and positive ones are like Teflon. So a negative experience will stick to you immediately, but it takes stopping and pausing for at least 15 seconds for our brain to experience the joy or the gratitude for a moment.
Isn't that crazy?
So it takes literally 15 times as long for your brain to register a beautiful experience than it does a negative one. So I think one of the most important practices is how you use time in your experience. So anytime that you think this is really great, pause and go, I'm gonna just sit with this for a second.
Well, and watch your mind in that time, because your mind will go, but.
This is great, but what if?
Even just like, but you got shit to do, like.
Yeah. I'm going to actually give you guys 15 seconds because you're going to realize how long that actually is, because it feels long. So take a second. Think of something absolutely beautiful. Think of one positive thing, and then hold that in your mind starting now. That's how long it takes for anything positive to stick.
Isn't that wild?
Yes.
Where negative is just like,
negative, it's stuck.
Like,
it's there.
Yeah.
So literally, if we do not take time to specifically meditate on gratitude,
allow it to soak in,
it will not stick.
That's really smart. And I think I go to like thinking of like, if you're outside, you see, say you do a hike, you get to the top and you have this crazy view. It's so natural to just go, okay, let's go back down, So just going, holy shit, let's just stand here for a minute. Yeah.
There's this movie I like. It came out several years ago. It's called Happy Thank You, More Please.
I remember the title. I never saw it.
Josh Radnor, who starred in How I Met Your Mother. He's the one who wrote and directed it. And there's this scene where these two are out on a date, and she's talking about this very issue, this gratitude and joy, and this karmic belief that there has to be a certain amount of suffering to outweigh the joy I can experience. And this, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about. And she says she's on a cab ride, and the cab driver says, "You have such capacity for joy, but you need practice gratitude or it won't happen." And she says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Just say thank you." She's like, "That's it?" "Yes, stop in that moment and say thank you. And then say more please." And I actually do this. Like,
you do? Yeah.
I totally do this. I say thank you. More please.
It's funny. I have I'm part of this like program right now, and the guy that leads it, that's his sort of general attitude and mantra for life. Be grateful for what you have and ask for more. Yeah. I think people can generally be grateful for what they have, sort of. Yeah. But the asking for more is like, what? Wow. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's steeped in that belief that there's a limit.
Mm-hmm.
See, like all of this is threading back together. We've actually done a pretty
loop.
Good circle.
Yeah, we have.
Yes, it's all tied back into that,
Yeah.
But, make your gratitude list. Do it in the moment. Take at least 15 seconds and say more, please.
More, please.
So thank you all for joining us, and thanks to Laura for being on the show. The hub for all our work is theartofgrowth.org. You can contact us there if you're interested in coaching, Enneagram and life coaching with Joel Hubbard, and relationship coaching with me and my wife, Abby. And again, you can get to all of Laura's work through lauramckowen.com. If you can leave us a rating on iTunes, it helps people find the show. You can check out our Facebook page, Instagram, all that jazz, because we appreciate being part of your growth journey. This show is produced by me, Jim Zartman, as well as all the music at Talkie Record Studio in Lynn, Massachusetts. Thanks for joining us and have a great week.